In this video, we're going to show you how to install a bicycle tire and inner tube on a wheel. The very first thing you're going to want to do is pick up your wheel and see which side is the drive side and the non-drive side. And the reason that that's important is because we want to make sure we put the tire on in the correct orientation for the tread pattern. So this is the cassette driver. This is what accepts the cluster of gears on the rear wheel. Now that is always going to be on the right side of your bike. It's a good reference point. The other reference point we're going to need to know about is this valve hole. The valve hole is where the valve goes through the rim, be it an inner tube or a tubeless valve. In today's lesson, we're going to go over how to install an inner tube. So we'll be using a Presta valve style inner tube. Now, once you've gotten those 2 points out of the way, you're going to want to pick up your tire. Now you can see that there's like a V formation pattern on this tire. That's meant to point forward when you look down at the front wheel. Every tire is going to be a little different, so I would definitely recommend that you look at the engraving on the side of the tire for the rotational direction arrow. Once you've identified that, the other piece that you're going to want to look for is actually just the logo on the side of the tire, also known as the hot patch. A good little trick is to actually put that hot patch centered on the valve hole. And the reason for that is simply because if you have a puncture that's maybe say a quarter of the way around your tire and you have something sticking in your tire, well, when you look inside the tire, you'll have a reference point to see where that puncture is from the inside to see if it made it all the way through or not. So that's a good little trick. It also kind of looks pro. Once you've identified all that, you literally just lay that first bead on top of the wheel in the middle of the wheel. And then what you're going to do is work it around so that the rest of the bead finds its way into the rim as well. Now you're going to get to a point where it gets a little tighter, and you're going to want to use one of these tire levers. You can pick up a tire lever set at any bike shop. It's a great tool to have in your kit. What it does is simply go between the rim and the tire and lever the tire into the center of the rim. Just like that. When you have your first bead of the tire set, now it's time to get the inner tube. Now there's a few tricks on this inner tube. These inner tubes come flat packed like this. They look like that in the box. And if you try to install an inner tube that's in that shape, it's actually kind of difficult. It could twist. So what I recommend is put a couple PSI in your inner tube just so it holds shape like that. Once you've done that, find that valve hole again. And you're going to basically just stick this valve in and then put the tire over it and just work the tube around so that it sits right nicely inside the tire, and ideally inside the rim if you can. The next thing you're going to do is push up on the valve a little bit so you have a little bit of room for that second bead to start right near that valve, and it'll sit right in there just like that. You can also pull down on the valve a little bit if you need to kind of like lock that second bead in place. Once you've done that, just work that second bead around with the inner tube inside the tire. You're going to get to a point where the tube wants to kind of go across like that. Just kind of keep on using your hand and pushing it up as you push that second bead on. Eventually, you're going to get to a point where that tube sits up inside the rim and the tire is going to get a little tighter. At that point, what you're going to want to do is use your tire lever again to finish off the second bead. Now you want to make sure that when you're using that tire lever on the second bead, you don't pinch the inner tube. So it's kind of a tricky thing. If you feel the inner tube with the point of your tire lever, you definitely want to back off. But you know, most of the time it goes on just this easy. And that's the second bead, at which point you then can take your Presta valve nut, which looks like this, and you can thread it up the Presta valve, and that'll lock it in place, and then you're ready to inflate your tire and go for a ride.